All right, Jay. We're not in the top four. Apparently, as was said by someone else,
because the greatest team the world has ever known is in fourth place.
Hold on.
Go right ahead.
Those don't compute. The greatest team in fourth.
Go right ahead, Chuck.
Anyway, as once was labelled by a fellow content creator, Sleeping Giant and Fallen Giant. The Fallen Giant has surpassed the Sleeping Giant, and Arsenal have taken up fourth spot in the EPL, and it looks like they could grab a firm hold of it if they win their games in hand, and they could run away from Man United, run away from West Ham, and only have to worry about Spurs. So will it be true that fourth spot is Arsenal's exclusively to lose?
I don't see how it isn't at this stage, because of the fact that Arsenal are already in fourth place and they have 3 games in hand over the closest to them, which is Manchester United and West Ham. And then only a game in hand over Spurs, but still have the points. You'd always rather have the points than the games. Arsenal have the points and the games. So if I look at the other 3, that would be Spurs, West Ham and Manchester United. We just finished talking about Manchester United and what they are not. This season it's a throwaway season. I don't see them coming back, going on a run and surpassing Arsenal, especially because the game's still coming up now. Draw against Watford, loss against Manchester City, Liverpool are coming, and then there is an Everton away. I believe the Spurs. There's Spurs, there's Liverpool, and then there's Everton away. I don't expect Manchester United to get a win in any of the in the Spurs or the Liverpool game, so they're going to fall away as a result just now. And then when you look at Spurs are like Hassan Huttel's Southampton. It's a roller coaster. The coach Conte was lamenting the position of the team and thinking out loud about his position in the team, and following a run of games where they'd lost 4 games out of 5, and he said that was good enough. He could not understand. He looked like someone who was just confused by the whole situation. Like, he does not know what to do with his team. His team have lost 4 games in 5. Suddenly now they've won 3 games in 4, and they scored 5 in the one game. They put 4 against Leeds, and they've also won against Manchester City in that time. So I don't even know what the next run of games is going to look like from Spurs. But because that is the case, they might just now go on another run of losses. So I don't trust them. And then when I come then to West Ham, there is in the last 20 years, yes, when only Leicester, when they won the Premier League in that Cinderella fairy tale season of theirs, made it into the top 4 and into the Champions League. Other than them, there has been no team that has made it into the top 4 out of the traditional Big 6. And it seems as if West Ham have hit that wall that teams outside of that Big 6 who have good seasons to begin with eventually come into. We saw Leicester last 2 seasons. In the season before last, they were comfortably in the top 4 for the longest time. At some point, they were the closest challengers to Liverpool. And then on the last day, they failed to qualify. Same thing last season. Last day, failed to qualify. West Ham last season, they were looking good. You were talking about Moyes as the best coach in the world because he was doing a good job. And relative to the situation he finds himself in, he's still doing a very brilliant job. But the question of getting into the top 4, eventually those big teams and their resources and the players available to them eventually, and this is my opinion, where Kevin De Bruyne was quoted as saying that the league is something that he'd rather much win than the Champions League, which is like you've never even won the Champions League. But his rationale is that it's harder to do, and I believe that as well. It's a marathon. You get found out in the league, and eventually the cream does rise to the top.
To do? I mean, except for Liverpool, the ones pushing them all the way, there's no one really to worry about in the last 5 years. Whereas in the Champions League, there are a lot of threats, and they haven't won it themselves.
There are a lot of threats, but the Champions League, when you do get into the knockout phases, it's a cup competition. And yes, it's exclusively made up of the best teams in Europe, and that makes it something other than the FA Cup, for example, or the League Cup, which they won 4 years in a row up until this season. But ultimately, when you see Chelsea, in my opinion, come relatively out of nowhere to win the Champions League last season, They were never going to win the league, though. They were good enough to win the Champions League, but that is something that happens at times in a knockout competition. Those teams mentioned, the Chelsea 2012 and Inter Milan 2010, they can go and hold out for a game against Barcelona at the Camp Nou. But I believe you put them in the La Liga table at that time with Barcelona, they're not touching Barcelona. Barcelona win the league, and as I'm saying, there's a longer sample size where you know exactly what happens. There's no team who wins the league where you can then come back and say it was a fluke, or they were a bit like even Leicester in that particular season. That's because everyone had fallen away and they had time to recover their form, but they didn't, and Leicester just kept on going. So I think West Ham don't quite have the legs to get into the top four, and by that alone, having pointed out where Arsenal are, and I do believe Arsenal are playing the best football of those teams that I've mentioned. So I do think it's Arsenal's to lose.
I think it's arguable in terms of who's playing.
And that fourth
best
place does
football.
belong to Arsenal, traditionally.
Yes, traditionally, that's
unfortunately.
True. Look, I don't know if they're playing the best football, because Spurs just put away Everton for 5. West Ham pushed Liverpool all the way, and they were holding.
But
on
prior
for
to that, they lost against Burnley.
Yeah, because things happen in the league. Man United failed to beat Watford. It happens in the league. But
Okay,
look,
Jack.
I think it's a solid claim for fourth, because what is to Arsenal's advantage, because even though they play Leicester, they play Tottenham, and they play Liverpool, right? Do I have those fixtures correctly?
Yes, Liverpool are coming to get a beating at the Emirates.
With those points in hand and that particular position, what you find as well is that West Ham, Tottenham and United play amongst themselves as well within that 4 games span. So I think that would obviously boost Arsenal, because someone's losing ground on the chase for fourth. So I think it would be fair to say it's yours to lose. But Arsenal do have a history of doing an Arsenal. So as much as it is yours to lose, I would not be surprised if come the end of the season you are in 5th. I would not be surprised. I honestly wouldn't.
Chuck, when you say Arsenal have a tendency to do an Arsenal,
capitulate.
Arsenal have never choked away 4th place.
Yeah, but you choked away other things.
Yes, other things. But 4th place, Chuck. That's why I say traditionally, this is Arsenal's position. For the longest time, that is what everyone got accustomed to, that Arsenal finish in 4th place. So when Championships on the line, that's a different situation altogether. But when 4th place is on the line...
So all those times when you're not participating in Europe, what happened then? You didn't choke the position.
No, the whole season, Arsenal did not look like they were going to get into the Champions League. They lost 3 seasons.
They blip into 4th and they're going to maintain it, and you're confident of that. And there are no worries about slipping further down.
Well, it's not. There's no worries because for full disclosure, I did pick Manchester United to finish 4th only a couple of weeks ago, but and that's because I've not believed wholeheartedly in Arteta. I've not been a someone who's all in on him. But I did note that he's not going to go anywhere, especially until before the end of the season. And I'm also holding out to see what he does in May. Where does he finish ultimately for me to give a full judgment? And when you watch Arsenal of late, Odegaard is balling. Saka is continuing his maturation process, where I've got Liverpool fans, and I just want to say to Liverpool fans, you get away, you keep your grubby hands off of our star boy. I've got Liverpool fans who keep telling me that is the one player that they are lusting after. They want him at Liverpool. I suppose in their minds that is the long-term successor to Mo Salah, but that is not going to happen, because this is not Chelsea or Manchester City. As much as they've been great over the last few seasons, this is still Liverpool. No one is going from Arsenal in their prime to Liverpool.
I'll tell you this. Diaz, after having played 7 games, has got a trophy. So if anything, moving to Liverpool right now is a good move. So I don't know. I don't know if you can keep a hold of anyone.
That's not the argument. I'm not saying that Arsenal are a better situation than Liverpool. I'm saying though that Saka is not going anywhere. That is the statement that I'm making. Saka's not going anywhere, and he continues on the trajectory that he's on. I only foresee good things, and the fact that this is the youngest team in the league. The kids ain't bad, and with them being where they are, and what Arteta has done, he has rid the team of the personalities who he felt are not falling in line. like Aubameyang of recent in recent times. Aubameyang is doing great at Barcelona, and Arsenal are doing better without him. That is something that worked out for both parties. And for this to work, and for the project that you can clearly see Arsenal have undertaken, where they have gone young with a young coach, the players that remained had to be his players, which is what is happening. The defense set for the next 10 years, unless something goes horribly wrong with the form of one of the players. Although I'm kind of looking at Tierney a little differently of late. The only reason is because he's being asked to defend and not attack at all. He seems to be surplus to the needs of Arsenal going forward. But if he's just there as a defender, that's problematic because he's not the greatest defender and he's got these stiff hips. If you go at him, his turning circle is like a truck. And even in the game on the weekend, the heck was happening on the left-hand side between him, Gabriel, and Xhaka. That needs to be sorted. That needs to be looked at. And Arsenal still do have players to come on, but that's for the future. We're not getting any players this season. But for now, with the form that Arsenal are in, the form that where you have a Smith Rowe going down with COVID again, unfortunately, you have Martinelli coming back into the team and scoring. And I believe Smith Rowe should be ahead of him when he comes back into the team. He's suddenly a Frank Lampard reimagined somewhat. So yeah, Arsenal have the better pieces playing at a higher level than a Spurs and a West Ham, and the pieces that Manchester United have, who I think are more talented than Arsenal, they're not playing very well. So the combination of those things, I can't see anyone else finishing in fourth right now as a switch here today.
I think you sit clearly on the pound seat, but I would not hold my breath. Not as an Arsenal supporter, not as an Arsenal fan, because we've seen them fall from.
Let me ask you this question: if it's not Arsenal, who would you think could capitalize on Arsenal falling away from that fourth place?
When I see, I think Levy has spoken to Harry Kane and said to him, I think you can leave at the end of the season, because his smile is back, his mojo is back. I think if Conte can get his boys to put a run together, especially because you only have one game on them, they're ideally positioned to chase you guys. Man United, they're further problems. They can win the next 4 games on the bounce, but something else will fall again this season because there's just too much happening in the back room. West Ham, I think, as you've said, they've hit their ceiling because they've done as good as they can.
Antonio's not scoring again.
They only have one weapon, which is Bowen at the moment. Lanzini's just playing. Benrahma started like a house on fire on the bench now. Their players.
Can I just
really
say something about Benrahma?
Yeah.
Like Benrahma's highlights on YouTube and stuff. Man, I've not seen that guy. Like watching full games, I'm like, who's in the highlights package? It for him,
Yeah.
It really is highlights, and he was dominating at a lower level, it seems, because when he gets the ball with West Ham in the Premier League, you are right. He started off like a house on fire. He was converted, but then when you look at his XG and XA, like they weren't that high. You thought that maybe this is gonna come down at some point, and then it did. And when that disappeared, like the overall form was nowhere.
I think with West Ham as well, they were shifting too many pieces because at the beginning of the season, Bowen I think was injured, and they did well without him. They added him, and then they did better. Hit a slump again, and now they're trying to bring things back again. Lanzini was always on the bench, and now he's finding game time now. Fornals is a regular who started well as well, along with Benrahma. His form is dipped as well. So I think, and what they miss, well, they need the guy on the pitch all the time. Declan Rice, they need him all the time. I mean, I heard the commentators say against Liverpool that they didn't miss him. Sure, I didn't miss him in terms of them not being overrun in midfield, but if Declan Rice is there as a different dimension, then all of a sudden Antonio can hang all the way up there because he used to come deep to get the ball. But if he's hanging all the way there, he can bully. Konate had a torrid time against Antonio, had a torrid time. But if he's targeting Konate the whole time and Declan Rice is holding his position, they play differently. But I think for them, as I was saying, they've been switching and shopping and changing pieces. No one has been fit the whole time that they can rely on, and as a result, because there are no other options on the bench to substitute like for like, that has hindered them.
They are limited.
Yeah, they
in
are
terms
limited
of what's available to them.
So I think Spurs, because Kulusevski is doing the simple things, running in the right areas, playing simple balls. He's very effective. Son and Kane have found their mojo back. If you've got Lucas Moura and you've got Bergwijn to call on, Bentancur, masterclass in midfield in terms of keeping things simple and keeping the ball ticking and keeping the team moving. So if those guys can put a run together, they might snatch it. But as well, they have to put a rabbit out the hat.
If Manchester United beat Spurs, and when Arsenal do play that rearranged game against Spurs, and Arsenal manage to get a win in that, then it's over.
And what about the games in between that you guys are playing between then?
I think largely Arsenal and Spurs will be matched in terms of the results. That's what the table would suggest up to this point. Close enough where you would think largely for the rest of the season they will mirror each other in terms of the points that they collect, unless someone goes on a tear, which there's no evidence to suggest that that's going to happen because of what we've seen up to this point. So if it holds what we've seen for 25 games, which is long enough to get an idea who you're dealing with in terms of these teams, then it does come down to a few games, which is why ultimately I think that the title will come down to the game mano a mano, Liverpool versus Man City, because everywhere else they've been as good as the others. So it's going to be a matter of what do you do then against your direct opponent. So that's what I think. With Arsenal having the points and 3 games in hand over United, they can worry less about United than against the Spurs, who are closer in points. And it's only a game in hand that Arsenal have on Spurs. So if Spurs go into that game against Manchester United and United manage to not lose, particularly if they win, does not affect the position of Arsenal all that much. But it does affect the position of Arsenal in relation to Spurs, because now Spurs have another game on their schedule, 2 games behind, and they're still on the same number of points, with Arsenal playing a game they should win this in the upcoming game. And then, as I'm saying, when Arsenal come up against Spurs themselves, if Arsenal manage to win that game, man, we'll be watching Tuesday and Wednesday night games next season.
All right, look, I'm about to ask you this question. Who do you think is key for Arsenal that should they fall away, it might deter a chance of holding on to fourth?
What do you mean?
Who do you think is keeping you guys running? Or do you think all the pieces at Arsenal are interchangeable? Who's your key man this season?
The team, Chuck.
The team.
As I'm saying, when you look at the form of Odegaard, he's come on. Saka is Saka. Martinelli and Smith Rowe interchange, and you don't lose much. You go into midfield. I'm not expecting much from Granit Xhaka. So him being there doesn't do anything for Arsenal in the negative or the positive. Thomas Partey is playing better. White, still don't think his price tag is justified, but he is, and of late has been playing better than Gabriel as well. And even though you have Tomiyasu who's been out, Cedric has performed way better this season than what he did last season when he was deputizing at right back. And then, as I'm saying, Kieran Tierney, a little concerned by that, but it's not yet a catastrophe where it's something we absolutely need to look at. So overall, I mean, even Lacazette is not scoring the goals, which is why he still needs to be replaced by a goal scorer. But even when you look at the goal between that Saka scored, the
touches,
the interplay between the two of them, you know, he's great at that, bringing his teammates into the game and facilitating those goal scoring opportunities. So overall, the team is performing well. Although I think now it's becoming clearer and clearer that Saka is the best player on that team. Would not want him to go down. I don't think he's as easily replaceable as some of the other guys.
Okay, I'll ask you that because Reece James just came back to Chelsea, and he seems to be the spark that just lit a fire under the behinds, and they're playing now at a particular level that wasn't there when he was injured. One, his forays into the front, his goal threat, and his distribution, or rather his passes into the box, those are good, and they've made him play like a different side. Would you say, because of that addition and how it's flipped things at Chelsea, would you say that he's their best player? Or is that reserved for someone else? That's
crazy to think about, right? That the right back or right wing back is the best player especially at a Big Six team. Because
look at the number of goals and assists that he's already provided thus far this season.
And the team who spent as much money as they have on collecting the players that they've put together. But it is very clearly Reece James for me. It very clearly is him. Even on the weekend, when you see his goal, he is turning his defender this way and that, this way and that, and then he's shooting. The volley goal he scored, I believe, away against Newcastle, that's a different talent, you know. And when he's in the team, or when he's out of the team, when Azpilicueta is the one playing on that side, and you've seen as well Hudson-Odoi playing there, you've also seen Pulisic playing there. Those guys, as experienced as Azpilicueta is, as talented as those other youngsters are, there is no one on the Chelsea team who's able to do and able to give the team what Reece James is able to give them. I believe even with Chilwell out, they are still a more formidable team with James in there, rather than if it was flipped, if James was out and Chilwell was still in there. Because just how often he finds himself in positions where he can affect the game, how often he's in the box, and when he's in there, the decisions that he's making, the assists that he's giving, the goal scoring this season that we've seen, that step up where he's scoring goals. The thing that he does, which Trent doesn't do, is the goals. And he's an accomplished finisher at that. It's not like the ball's just hitting him and it's going to the back of the net, or you think that this is going to end. This is purpose built into how Tuchel is utilizing him, and what he's now come to know of the talent that he has at right back. So I look around, Chelsea have good players, but their players have been up and down. There's no other guy. I mean, they had a guy finish in the top 3 of the Ballon d'Or, but we don't really rate him all that much. But James, for me, James is their best player.
Look, I'd want to argue, but I choose more to agree with you, because I'd say I'd put up Edouard Mendy, because Edouard Mendy is a special talent in goals. But I do believe that Chelsea would still be third if you have Kepa in goal, simply because Chelsea's defense is so solid. It's rare to get a shot on target, and when they do, I mean, yeah, in the game against Brentford, when they were bombarded, Mendy had a standout game. In the Carabao final, Mendy had a standout game, but how often is he called on to do that? Not very often. So if there was a different keep, I think they'd still be in the top 4. I don't know if they'd be chasing for the league, but they'd still be in the top 4. Whereas we've seen clearly without James that in terms of goal threat, in terms of creativity, they're clearly lacking without James. So in terms of someone giving them something different, a different dimension, because we've seen Alonso play, we've seen Abo, the captain Gonja, Aspilicueta. We've seen Chaloba, we've seen Sa, we've seen all different defenders. They don't give you what James does. And I know I'm talking about across the board in terms of the back line, but in terms of going forward, putting decent crosses, in terms of being a goal threat, no one does that. And as soon as she comes into the team, all of a sudden Pulisic is alive. All of a sudden Havertz is alive, because they have those chances.
He activates so many other things and so many of the other players. He makes his teammates better, and I think that's one of the marks of a great player, that they make everyone else play at a higher level than when they're absent. And James has absolutely done that, and has proven that on his return.
So if we had to have one full season with James fit, Chilwell fit, and if we had to have Kovacic play a full campaign with N'Golo Kante, I think they have a shout.
They have a goal scorer, because if you look at the record on the table, right, they've lost only, I think, one more game than Liverpool and Manchester City, and it's the draws that have killed them. And in those draws, it's goals. What I said earlier, that you just need one more goal and you've got the victory. So if Havertz maybe is the answer, or whoever they might decide to bring in over the summer, if they have someone banging in 20 plus goals, then watch out for Chelsea.